Good boys. Good boy, Benny. Thank you. Alright, good boy. You can take it. Gentle, Benny. Good boy. Take it. His first step is to take it to the center of his mat and begin the joy. Today's meal here that we're recording is actually a whole chicken from a random grocery store. I think 4 to 5 pounds. Good boy, Benny. And this accounts for roughly between, 50% and 2/3 of his calories for the day. Give or take, roughly. It depends on what his activity level is, and his health, and a few other factors. But for him, at this moment, this accounts for roughly a little less than half of his daily... Sorry, a little more than half of his daily calories. Assuming, like, say, 4.5 pounds, kind of thing. So yeah, that's Benny and his, frozen, fresh, whole, raw, chicken. And I'll feed something like this when I want a meat-heavy, meal for him, because I think he's had a lot of bone recently. If, for example, I knew he'd had a lot of, plain meat, or a lot of commercial food, I'd probably go with a carcass, or a couple carcasses. But again, you gotta kind of balance it out based on what you've been feeding recently, and the health of the animal, and their activity level, and, you know, a few other things, simple things like this. As typical, Benny is going through his ritual taste test or lick. He likes to clean, wash, I don't know, maybe taste test, all over his meal when he first gets it. And then once he's tasted, washed the entire thing, and figured out how he's going to proceed with it, he then goes about his consuming process. Because this is frozen rock solid, as you can tell by listening to how his teeth are grinding against it, and as opposed to him just being able to crush it in one bite. For this, this is, again, one of the really strong benefits of feeding a frozen, as opposed to defrosted, raw, fresh, whatever you want to call it, meal. When you feed the frozen, they chew it a lot more. They're less likely to gulp and to try to swallow it as quickly as possible. They tend to mix everything together fairly effectively with this approach. They grind everything up with each kind of scrape of their teeth against the meat and bone. It gives them a lot more of a oral workout. Usually makes them a lot more satisfied and content for what they've gotten. I know that if I try to feed Benny the same amount of calories in a commercial dry food, he finds it personally offensive, because there's so little there, relatively speaking, compared to a whole, fresh, all the moisture there food. He feels like he's getting ripped off, and you can see it in him when he is eating, like, he eats it quickly, way too quickly, in my opinion, and then he looks at you like, is that it? Like, come on, like, that was a snack, but that's no meal. Like, you can tell, he's always not nearly as satisfied, after a meal with commercial food, as he is after having a, whole, like, chicken, or whatever he happens to be eating for that day. obviously, because this is raw and it hasn't been cooked or dried, it's perfectly safe. It's mainly cooked chicken bones where the danger, and other poultry, any bird for that matter. Once their bones are cooked, they become very dangerous for dogs to consume, or humans. But humans are less likely to eat the cooked bones. But just so you know, as long as it's raw, whether frozen or not, it's totally safe. You still want to encourage the dog to be chewing and eating and, like, not just, like, gulping down their food. Which is, again, one of these strong advantages of feeding a frozen meal. But some of those advantages are there for raw, fresh. Just not nearly as beneficial and useful and effective. Like, my guys, when they eat frozen, never have anything but gleaming white teeth. There's never any spot with, like, plaque buildup or anything. Like, the breath always smells the same as they did when they were babies, kind of concept. There's no bad dog breath kind of thing. Unless, like, say, for example, if they get food poisoning, some dogs will smell particularly foul. So, but aside from some secondary health issue, they shouldn't have any bad odor in their breath or their coat. And that loss of the puppy breath that most people seem to be aware of occurring with a dog maturing is actually the result of the dog's mouth becoming infested with plaque and dental hygiene becoming less than adequate. So, realistically, the dog's teeth, if they're in the right shape and they haven't been broken or neglected for some time, shouldn't have any nasty odor in their breath. Benny, like the rest of my guys have been, just has no bad breath issue, really. So he's just working away on his chicken. For this, probably somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes. It doesn't last as long as, say, like something like a turkey, obviously. But still, for like a meal, it's a good, decent choice, and you can pick it up almost anywhere. Admittedly, if you're buying in the grocery store like this came from, it's a bit more expensive. But if you plan out in advance and you shop around and find good deals and whatnot, there's no reason that it needs to be that expensive. In fact, I can feed my dogs a raw, fresh diet like this for less than it costs me to buy a equivalent amount of commercial food. Mainly because I know where to go to how to, take full advantage of all of my resources and skills and knowledge. So, for example, like butchers will give you free bones. Being friends with hunters will give you all sorts of bits and pieces. Like, so, it's not exactly cheap, but if you're willing to put some effort in, you can definitely find some decent prices and to have it be really relatively inexpensive. If I was less caring about the trying to have a variety and change it up all the time and make sure he's not eating the same thing all the time and make sure it's doesn't have any toxins or other bad things in it, make sure that there's no antibiotics or other chemicals that could impair the animal's health or well-being, both for Benny or for the animal he's eating. Um, One of the nice things also about feeding frozen that most people don't consider is that it really makes it incredibly different from what a living creature is. So, by making their food items be completely completely different from any potentially living creature, even say a chicken, um, makes it so that there's almost no I can't speak today. There's almost no chance that the dog will mix things up and get confused and think, oh, well, that chicken must be my dinner just as much as the chicken that's in my bowl, kind of thing. Um, Theoretically, if you were to feed a whole prey diet that had all, like, say, basically a chicken freshly killed, um, there is some potential there for the animal to see any chicken that they see, and potentially even then any bird they see as a potential prey item. And assuming that you're not living out in the boonies and hunter gathering for your food, I'm assuming is something that you're not really looking for. So, by making there a very strong distinction between what is a food item and what is a living creature, uh, dogs will have less difficulty with potentially mixing up the two and potentially harming a living creature. Um, Generally speaking, I haven't seen any relative increase of likelihood of a dog to be aggressive towards what they perceive as a prey item, um, whether they're fed raw or whether they're fed commercial food. Both groups have animals in their ranks that will, no matter what you do, if they're around a small prey animal like a bird or a rabbit, they are going to, sorry guys, they're going to try to catch it and eat it. It's just every bit of instinct in their brain, and you can't change millennia of breeding to create an animal that will do such things. And I don't think you can really blame it on the animal. I don't think that they're bad animals or bad dogs. They're just doing what their brain and instincts are telling them to do. But assuming that you're talking about a pet, or, God forbid, a service dog like Benny, you want to make it really, really clear from day one that living creatures are never, ever food. And that aggression towards any living creature is unacceptable. And Benny has no issues with that, but frankly, Benny is more likely to do harm just being an accidental goofball than he is to do harm intentionally. Like, for example, he gave a couple of rabbits in the dog park a heart attack. In fairness, any rabbit who comes to live in the dog park, the place where dogs run off leash, and there's dozens of big dogs running around, probably not hundreds. If there was, I wouldn't be there. But, you wouldn't think rabbits would think, that's where I want to live, but several groups of rabbits in my prior experience have chosen to live in the dog park. I can only assume they think it's safer there than it is where the coyotes can potentially reach them. Though I would have assumed that the coyotes could jump the fences if they wanted to. So I don't really have a perfect answer on that. But generally speaking, for whatever reason, these bunnies decided living in the dog park that I usually go to was a good idea. And on multiple occasions, while Benny was running by playing with another dog or whatever, Rabbit would get spooked out of whatever area they had been hiding in, frozen, and take off running, and Benny would just see this little thing running, and he'd go and bounce over and jump on it, and the next thing you know, the rabbit screamed this, horrible, women dying horrible baby crying scream. I don't know if you've ever heard a rabbit scream. It's probably one of the most horrible sounds in the world. You can never forget that sound once you hear it. But the poor creature just had a heart attack when Benny landed on it and was dead instantly. It let out that scream and that was it. And the next thing you know, poor Benny was standing there with the bunny in his mouth like, Dad, why isn't it playing anymore? Make it play with me. Like, he wasn't trying to hurt it or anything. He didn't mean to cause him any harm. He was just a giant dog that saw this small creature that went running by and got excited and went, oh, what's that? Let's go play. And went and jumped on it and gave it a heart attack. I mean, when you're talking about such a small creature compared to such a big dog, where one is a prey item and one is a predator, it's really not uncommon to frighten them to death. So, another reason I don't know why they would choose to live in the dog park. I don't encourage it. Benny didn't eat the rabbit. He was mourning it, actually. I had to take it away from him and give him a flea and tick bath and make sure that he didn't get exposed to anything. I don't know if those rabbits are healthy or not. I don't know anything about them and I don't want to take any risks. But he was just beside himself. Even once I had thrown the dead rabbit in the garbage can, Benny kept going next to the fence where the garbage can was closest to and whimpering and jumping up on the fence and kind of pointing towards the garbage can and barking, and he just was very upset that this friend he had made was gone, and why wouldn't he come back? He plays with lots of small dogs and they have no issue. For one, they're dogs, so they know how to play with another dog. They don't just have a heart attack the moment the other dog comes up to them. Or at least your usual dog won't. I know some people, they create a situation where the dog is so out of control and so overwhelmed with their owner's anxiety that they can be a little out of control, but that's not your usual dog or situation. But yeah, so, even in situations where Benny has been attacked by vicious dogs, unfortunately, dogs see another canine who's wearing clothing or harness such that you see on Benny right now, or a muzzle, etc. They actually view these things as targets effectively, and you can take a normal, sane, reasonable dog who's usually perfectly fine, and you put this dog in these particular items, and it freaks the dogs out totally, and either they're afraid, and so they are aggressive to try to scare off or kill whatever they view as a threat, or they find it absolutely outrageous and they find it even more to be aggressive about. So it's not uncommon, unfortunately, for service dogs to get attacked by other animals in the community. For example, coyotes or dogs or cats or whatever. And because they're so friendly and easygoing and non-aggressive, they often come out very much the worst out of it, and it can be very traumatic and very damaging to the dog. For example, Benny's been attacked, I think, 4 times now by small dogs in the community. All in cases of dogs that shouldn't have even been there. And the dogs were extremely out of control and aggressive, off-leash, and Benny was just going about his business, and the dogs came up to him and attacked him. In a couple of the cases, really actually doing some pretty significant damage to him. Tore him up pretty bad. He's got some scars still from those dogs' attack. And I ended up having to do a lot of remedial work to help ease the anxiety that developed as a result of being attacked and teach him that he didn't need to be afraid. Part of that meant me being accountable to him to say, I'm in control and I will protect you. So that means that regardless of the situation, if somebody wants to do anything to him, whether an animal or a dog or person or whatever, if anything wants to do anything to him, they've got to come through me first. You know, he won't have to worry about the dog who's trying to attack him, because I will stop that dog. You know, I don't like to hurt any creature, but I have a responsibility to my dog that he doesn't and shouldn't be the victim, because I didn't want to hurt another dog or another animal. So, as much as it's an unpleasant thing, I carry a police expandable baton and pepper spray, among other things, on my person when I'm out and about. So, ideally, I can just scare the dog off with yelling and waving or whatever. But if the dog comes after my dog, I'm not going to let it. If need be, I'll kill it. I'm not going to allow anyone or anything to harm my boy. And that's what I owe him. He gives up so much, and he sacrifices every day for me. Without any question, he's always there. He's my rock. It's the least I owe him. So, I've sworn that in the future, even if I have to hurt the dog, if that's what I have to do to keep the dog from harming him, that's what I'll do. But realistically, I would really prefer not to. Even an aggressive dog who's threatening Benny, I don't blame the dog. The dog's just being a dog and has been put in a very bad position and situation that they're just reacting to. It's not the dog's fault. Frankly, if I had the choice, I would far rather hold the punish the human, not the dog. But unfortunately, when these things happen, the owners often have allowed their dog at large to be accountable without their human to help them should the situation need it. You know, Benny's never, ever away from me in a situation where if he needs me, I'm not there for him. I'm not ready to do whatever I need to do to make sure he's safe. You know, he's never out of my eyesight. He's never in a situation where he has to deal with people or another animal without me by his side. And so I'm grateful for that. I don't have to worry about Benny getting hurt because I was irresponsible. But part of that means simple things like I don't let him roam off leash outside of a dog park or a fenced in yard. I work with him on a daily basis with his recalls and reinforcing coming when called and staying and dropping it down or not picking something up or whatever, retrieving, giving something to me, whatever the commands at that moment. We're constantly practicing one thing or another. And if he's struggling in one area, I'll pop over into a different area and we'll focus on different stuff for a while, and eventually we'll make our way around back to the subject where he was struggling, and by that point he's over whatever hump he was struggling with, and we move on and deal with whatever comes up next. It's been a lot of hard work and put a lot of time and effort in. You're looking at several years of professional training and expertise, working carefully and with considerable effort and sweat and time and patience and love and rewards and repetition. This is the outcome. But anywhere along that path, if I had chosen to go a different way and made a different choice and made mistakes, then obviously I would have to deal with those. We've been pretty lucky in terms of not getting off on the wrong foot. So from day one, like when he was just a baby and he came into my home, he had his crate, and he had his pen, and you know, he would spend a couple hours and he'd have his meal, sleep for a bit, then he'd wake up, go outside, go to the bathroom, play, have some fun, go for a walk, go to the park, do some training, whatever, then go to have a nap after eating another meal, and over and over and over again. But just so that he wouldn't have any opportunity to make mistakes and get towards the wrong way and on the wrong path. So now, he can be left out. He doesn't have to be in a crate to know that, this is what the behaviors are, this is how you behave. And to be frank, and when he was very young and I was still periodically leaving him alone for training purposes, when I'd come home, more often than not, I'd find him in his crate. Even when he had the choice to be out and about, it was one of the softest, most comfortable places in the house to lie, and he often found food in there, and, so he always enjoyed being in there. But that's really what you aim for, is the dog to be coming with you voluntarily and to be aiming for positive reward-based training. Obviously, sometimes there's a place for correction and even punishment in appropriate circumstances, but realistically, if you're going over 1 or 2% of the time with correction, you've done something wrong. Typically, I prefer to say not use correction at all if I can avoid it. I save correction for the very end of our training, once I've fully trained him on what I actually want and what I'm actually meaning and saying. Only time correction is valued is when the dog knows what to do, knows what's expected, and makes a choice to do something otherwise. Then and only then is correction really remotely valuable. If the dog does what you don't want them to do, and you live only on corrections, you'll regret it, and the dog will suffer. So, but anyways, Benny has now done his chicken, and as you can see, he's focused on making sure he hasn't missed any crumbs. He'll go around and check and capture every last little bit, but he's pretty much done effectively. And as you see, he's finished off that chicken pretty much raw, but frozen still, and that's really ideal. I don't want him to speed through his food, but I do want him to eat it reasonably quickly. I don't want him to get up and wander away and come back. I want him to just eat it and then it be done. And so if he gets up and walks away from food, then he loses whatever's left. So it teaches them pretty quick to just eat it and move on. That way, if for some reason he doesn't eat, I know that there's something actually wrong, as opposed to the dog just being stubborn or doesn't feel right. My guys are so eager for their food that I know if they're not eating, that means there's something seriously wrong. So I'd rather keep that in reserve as my warning flags. But anyways, so now you can see that Benny's finished his chicken, and you can see he doesn't look fully pregnant, but he definitely does not look empty as he did a minute ago. But I'm sure he'll have enjoyed that, and I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'm sure I'll see you around. Have a good day. Hey Ben, you gonna say bye? Or are you too fixated? Still licking? Okay. Well, I'm gonna sign off here. Have a good day, all.